Welcome, Wargamers. Join your hosts, Falcon and Monty, two Canadian wargaming enthusiasts, as we explore all aspects of tabletop wargaming. We roll dice, talk tactics, share hobby hacks, and explore new tabletop systems, all on the Trident Wargaming Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another Trident Wargaming episode. Today we're going to be changing it up a little bit and talking about some Battletech. So it's been a while. I know we did a couple episodes a while back, but time to bring her back, get back into Battletech. So with me today is Steven again. Welcome back.
Welcome. Well, thanks for having me back, Andy.
Not a problem, anytime. Always a pleasure, right? So we always tend to have a good time chit-chatting back and forth here and there, and then having you on the podcast. So it's good to have you. So kick her off, I guess. What's new? What's happening? What's going on? How's the league going for Battletech here in the city?
Well, there's lots going on with Battletech in the city these days. As you mentioned, there's the Edmonton Battletech League. We are in our 5th week of play now that I think about it. So, things are going pretty strong. We started off with, I believe, 17 players. One guy had to drop due to family commitments, but still got 16, which is a nice, robust, easy to schedule number. Makes my life a lot easier. So, things are going really, really well on that front. And General League's been a blast. Ooh, geez, so much to get into there, and I'll come back to that. I just was thinking about everything there, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much. And additionally, there's regular stuff going on just about every Thursday and, every other or just about every Friday as well for local stuff. So that I'm involved with. So there's Battletech 2.5 nights a week going on regularly. So.
No, that's pretty cool. Yeah, because you have some campaigns going on. I believe it was Thursday and Friday. Like your groups, the guys, a bunch of guys that are kind of grouped together. It's funny. I actually seen a Instagram post. Somebody, I'm not sure who it was, but I was looking at the picture and I was like, hey, that's the guys at Industrial Park Games. Hey, that's Steven right there. That's Battletech. So I had to.
Yeah, I don't know who that would be.
So
that's good. Yeah. I know there's 2 campaigns running on Thursdays. One starting this week to give me a break, and other stuff running on Fridays for clan stuff. So we're trying to get a good mix of different eras and different styles going. So.
Nice. And then they were also doing I think it was Alpha Strike as well on like Mondays.
Alpha Strike. Yeah, Alpha Strike ran Mondays, I believe in July. June. Sorry, what month are we in? I'd have to check with Jason at the store. I think they had their last one that they had scheduled, but I think they might be doing stuff, every couple weeks, once a month or something like that from now on, potentially. So, nice. Paul was running that.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So he did the artwork for League. I've talked with him about a bunch of stuff, but I've actually never met him. So at some point I gotta make it. Make it out for that. But Mondays aren't great for me usually. So.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, I've gotten some artwork from Paul in the past for other things that he's done just locally here. So it does some pretty good artwork. It's pretty cool what he does. So, but as for like any new players and whatnot, just dropping in, come checking out the games Thursday, Fridays, and like even Saturdays. Usually there's probably on the weekend guys are probably playing too, right?
Every Thursday for sure, and most Fridays we're at Industrial Park Games. Every league week there'll be people there as well on Saturdays. Anybody who wants to drop in is generally welcome Thursdays or Fridays and Saturdays. Generally I would just recommend for Fridays or Saturdays, message somebody or post in the group or something, just so that we can confirm there's something, because the odd weeks, everybody's busy, or if it's a non-league week, there might be other events at the store for, 40K or Flames of War or something like that. So, but people are always welcome to drop in and play. We've had a few guys lately that have been showing up on occasion, so some new guys, which is always good.
Yeah, that's cool. That's there's been a lot of activity lately, just with the pages that new players kind of coming into it. Right, I keep seeing people for requesting to join groups and stuff, and then seeing other people on the other Facebook group as well. So it's good to see that the community is still growing and there's still people interested and just having a good time rolling dice, right? So, which is really
key
cool.
thing.
Exactly. So, so anything outstanding kind of happened in the league? Have you had any big kind of moments, any kind of events?
Yeah, I've got a few good stories. I unfortunately, of course, can't be there for every game because we got some guys like Jason who works at the store who works Saturdays, so he's got to always schedule his games at weird off times. I've only managed to catch one of his, and there's usually a few a week where guys are camping or got other commitments. So we usually have, I'd say, of the 8 games that are played a week, usually 4 to 6 at the store on a Saturday, so I get to see the majority of them. Let me just kind of flip back through the weeks here. Week 1, we had the game of the week in week 1 was between Derek and Chris. So the Blue Bastards and the Wraiths, two of our teams. We started off just to give people just a concept here when I talk about Group C, what that means for the first section of league. We basically broke league up into 3 sections. So the first section, people were basically just randomly seated. I'd only played regularly with about 4 to 6 of the 17 guys in league, so I didn't really have an idea of who was good, who wasn't, who had experience, who didn't. So basically everybody just got randomly seated together in a lettered group, and you played everyone in your group. At the end of that group stage, the league reseeded based on standings, and it does that one more time then at the end of the year, and then we go into playoffs. So the idea is sort of to have a self-correcting skill system. So you're always playing people who are doing kind of relative performance to you. Okay. So that we wanted to give the newer players, you'd play a whole mix that first week, and if you really struggled, you'd get in the second set, all the guys you were playing were guys who struggled in their relative groups. So you'd have the opportunity to, play guys who were, really strong players, who were newer players, and then with another reseed coming again in that mix. So, and I think it worked pretty well overall. In the first 3 weeks of league, we had 3 teams go 3-0, 2 teams go 0-3, and 1 team go 0-2, but every other team that was in league, won or lost a game in their league. So that was really good, to see that we were getting that mix there. It wasn't just, everybody's, half the guys are winning all the games, half the guys are losing all the games. And in that week 1, when we had Derek and Chris play, it was just back and forth. One mech would go down for one side, one mech would go down for the other side, another one went down. So at one point, Chris was down 3-2. And then in a fire phase, he dropped 2 of Derek's mechs. So it was down to back to 2-1. All Derek had left was his spider. So he had a spider against a wasp and a rifleman. He DFA'd the rifleman and killed him. And it was a wasp and a spider just with like 1 medium left, just tearing at each other as they, were stumbling around. Finally, the wasp went down and the spider stood victorious. And that was the game of the week in League Week 1. It was so close and just impossible to call right to the end, right? And just 2 excellent guys, 2 great people. So it was super fun.
Those are epic moments like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It was great. Yeah. And then in week 2, we had something I thought at the time I'd never seen it happen, and I didn't think it would happen again. So in League, one of the things we have is just to encourage people to have fun, play loose, not worry too much about the points. Right. Everybody makes playoffs, regardless of how you do. You just have a tougher road in the playoffs if you haven't done well. The first week of playoffs, basically the top teams play the bottom, and in inverse seeding order. If you win, you go into the A side of the playoffs. If you lose, you go into the B side of the playoffs. And we also went with a no tie system. So you win or you lose. There's a couple of different tiebreakers if we end time on even kills. Most games of classic BattleTech, we got about 4.5, 5 hours. You get on Lance, there's a victor. Somebody either concedes or you get a Lance wipe, right? In week 2, we had a different Chris L, and Chad were playing, and we had a situation where there were what was it left for Chad? It was his Thug and his Thunderbolt, his Spider, and Chris had his Thunderbolt and his Catapult K2, the double PPC one.
Okay. Yeah.
And so the Spider and the Catapult were laying down with down a leg, and neither pilot wanted to risk trying to get up. And the Thunderbolt and the Thug, we were playing on the Devil's Bath Tukiad map, the swamp.
Oh yes. Yep.
And they're standing in the middle of the swamp at 1 hex, just trading with each other. And the Thunderbolt was down in a level 1 water. The Thug was in depth 0 water. They're just blasting each other, kicking each other. And in the turn, the Thug savaged the Thunderbolt. It falls into the depth 1 water, floods a leg, floods a side, both side torsos. So it's a CT and a leg. But the Thug goes down onto its SRM ammo and blows itself up. So we got a Thunderbolt with no weapons,
Ouch.
half a Catapult and half a Spider, and we've got a wrestling count. We got a 10 count. 1, everyone tries to stand up, fails, falls, piloting hits, guys go down. 2, the Spider makes it up. So if the Catapult can't get up, the Spider pilot will win because he's got a mobile mech with a weapon. The next turn, Catapult makes his roll in like an 11.
Oh wow.
So the Catapult's shooting at the Spider, which is trying to jump away, and he ends up getting dinged, and he falls, gyros himself. He's out.
Oh wow.
But I had never seen the whole we got to have a count to get somebody up here.
Yeah, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah. And then the weirdest thing was, the same thing happened in week 4 with one of the same players.
Oh wow. Wow.
Yeah. Dad had the same thing happen to him again in week 4 against against Chris. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that it's in BattleTech how when your mech goes down, right, from losing a leg or other damage or whatever, right, like it is critical. It is very critical when you're down and stuff happens, right? And that's the beauty about BattleTech. So much other stuff can happen in the game. But and just the swings that can happen. Yeah.
Because even just this last week, I wasn't there. I had some other things I had to take care of on Saturday, but I had one of the veteran guys who him and his opponent were playing another week. I had him basically filling in for me, and he was playing Lee from the Calgary League, one of the podcast hosts, one of the organizers, was up for the weekend and got a game in against one of our guys, and just got to be around League and have a good experience. And we had a situation where one guy was up 2 mechs, last turn starts, and he had 2 mechs get dropped by his opponent. One that the guy hit him he needed to get 9 points into his CT, hit him with 2 meds, hit him both in the CT. It's like a 2.7% chance of that happening exactly. Drops him, and it came down to, okay, who has the most mechs killed? Well, it's 2-2. Next tiebreaker, we go into the page 285 of Total Warfare. There's the crippled mechs.
Right.
They each have 1 crippled mech. Third tiebreaker is BV killed. The difference was 10 BV, which is, a third of a small laser, 3 points of armor. And the guy who was down 2 mechs going to the last turn ended up stealing it. And it was just like, you can't script this stuff,
No, you can't. Like, I know some of the games that I've had with Bill and some of the other dudes that, we kind of jumped in with, and just things happen in that game, right? You're jumping and you land in some water and you fall on your head. How does that happen, right? Like, how does it happen? I'm perfectly fine, and it happens, right? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Big core explosions.
I remember. I remember one time playing in a campaign game, and I was running a Kingfisher, and because people were coming on the key hexes, I had to come on a side hex, like a road hex, and turn to go down the main hallway. Mm-hmm. I'm like a 3/4 pilot, moved 1 hex and need to roll a 3 or better. 2, go down. Do I take a piloting hit? 2, take a piloting hit. Am I unconscious on a 2? 2, I'm out. My assault mech is 10 seconds into the fight, sleeping behind a wall while everybody just laughs.
Yeah, that does happen. It's insane how the rolls just go against you sometimes, and it happens, right? But
and it makes the game so much better.
Well, exactly, right? Those random factors that happen, you remember little moments and get to share it with all the guys that you played with or new guys that you're playing with now currently, and those beautiful moments like that. It's like that in every game, tabletop, board, whatever, right? Like, but BattleTech is definitely there's definitely moments of disaster in the game, right? You know, get that critical ammo explosion, and you're just like, oh, it blows you up. Like you said, death from above.
I mean, oh geez, I think one of the worst ones I ever saw for just everyone just stopping around the table and just the look of fear in people's eyes was in a campaign game. We were escorting off a VIP in a transport through like kind of one of the mountainy passy maps where there's some hills that, they go up, they go down, all that stuff. And the guy who was running the transport for our side misread the map and went down into these hills with the transport. Uh-oh. And it was a hovercraft, blew a side skip roll, whacks it on the side chart, and I think on an 8 on the side chart is a critical. And he rolled cargo compartment infantry bay. VIP is dead on the middle of a hostile planet where our ride is this guy's dad.
Oh boy.
And you could just see the players as went from laughing and joking to watching the roll, looking at the rule book, and you could just see the fear, like, oh no, what are we gonna do?
That's funny.
Yeah, we didn't make it off that planet.
But yeah, like you said, moments like that, right? And especially in campaigns. Like, it's just, you could come up with such stories and events that happen, and then it transgresses into even more stories and more events, and like, yeah, you remember this campaign? Oh yeah, you start just remembering that stuff, and you feed off of it, right? Yeah. So, and it gives the good vibes for players playing the game, even if it's a game you're losing. Like, you're just having fun with it, right? And it's awesome. Yeah. It's awesome. Oh, yeah. And currently, right now, you guys are just playing kind of like beginner tech, right?
Yeah. For League, yeah, League is essentially we had a bunch of polls and just let people kind of pick a lot of the stuff. We went with intro tech because of the 17 guys who originally signed up for League and the couple that were thinking about it but just you couldn't make it work their schedule, maybe 6 of them had regular experience in the last 5 years. Like,
right,
very new group overall. And especially if you're starting to kind of build a community, build a league, for BattleTech anyway, it's the place to start is that intro, because if you go into, for example, if we started in 3070s clan tech, the new players would be spending the whole time in the book like, what's a Hag 40?
Right.
What's a hyper assault Gauss rifle? How does the targeting computer interface with pulse laser? Is that a -3? Do they overwrite? Like, how does that work, right? Whereas with intro tech, it's very simple weapons. If you played 30 years ago, a medium laser is still a medium laser, right? There's not that. It still allows for there to be learning and development from a skill perspective, but it's a lot harder for somebody to just completely list you with stuff you've never heard of and models you don't have. And it's, with the new sets that have come out in the plastics, there's a great selection of intro tech mechs in there, right? So you can make a really viable force from even 1 or 2 of those lance packs. You didn't have to invest, $500 in minis.
Yeah. Hello. That would be me.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, no, I speaking of which, I ended up snagging the what do they call it? Comstar I think command level 2 recently here that they just came into the city.
Yeah.
I was
I still haven't got those yet.
Yeah, one of the shops here had got it, and I just happened to look at the store site. I was like, called them up right away. They're mine. I'm like, just get me them, right? So.
Oh yeah, you would have had to have been fast to get those.
Yeah, really. No, that's good to hear though. That with giving people some information and whatnot for like, if you are starting out, where do I start, kind of thing and whatnot. And then of course, after this league happens and you have your your playoffs and whatnot, obviously you'll probably have another one going on in some time. So what's next for like a new player? What would be next for an event or a campaign or tournament? Like, do they step up to the next kind of tech level, like the eras? Because right after that you have, is it I believe it is, it like Clan Wars or the Clan Invasion is the next era?
Well, yeah, so sort of to go through kind of trying to answer both of those questions. So we'll start with the tech. So from a tech perspective in Battletech, there's sort of 4 tech levels, and they've gone through different names. Currently, you'd call them introductory tech, standard tech, advanced tech, and experimental tech. They used to call them level 1, 2, 3, and 4, or they used to be called different variants of that. Had a bunch of different names over the years. Basically, introductory tech is pretty much only the Inner Sphere stuff, and it's only really the Succession Wars era stuff. It's the stuff that's in the Quick Start rules, if you get like the box set in that.
Right.
And the next tech level there up from that is your standard level. So that's where the vast majority of tech falls in BattleTech. And standard tech can be either Inner Sphere or Clan. And that would generally be, considered to be kind of like a 3050s, 3060s level technology for the most part. So for people that played, Clan Invasions back in the day, most of the stuff in there is stuff they would be familiar with.
Right.
Stuff like Clan ERPPCs, DOS rifles, pulse lasers, Artemis systems on your missiles, that kind of stuff. So that's more of the standard tech level. Again, you're not getting into the crazy stuff. You're not seeing variable speed pulse lasers or artillery or anything like that. And advanced tech is sort of like the narrowest tech level. It generally only has artillery and a couple of really niche technologies in it.
Okay.
And then experimental is generally more like your Solaris customs, your mixed tech, your super rare or not in production level, hardened armor, some of the special weapons types, that kind of stuff is experimental. So for the most part, in any type of learning or comp setting, you're generally going to see people start at intro or tournament and roughly stay about there. Because it's just the most balanced stuff that's been out the longest and it's the simplest to learn. The other stuff comes in more to play usually in campaigns or Solaris design challenges or that kind of stuff.
Right.
From a tech perspective. So to answer your second half of your question there about kind of what's next for either players or new players. So League, the plan is right now, I mean, so far everyone's been having a good time with League. Looks like League will probably return for next year unless, I get hit by a bus or something, which can always happen. So the plan for me, I would always like to run League probably what it runs now. So May to October. I don't like to have to drive in the city too much when the weather's really bad, and I don't want people to have to drive when the weather's really bad, right? I don't want people risking their life to try and avoid a default kind of a thing. So that's probably always going to be when we keep League 2. And And the rest of the year, the plan is to do a mix of a couple of things. So both during and outside of league, there's going to be, the games that run Thursdays, Fridays that are, regular group of players, but drop-ins are welcome. And if people want to become a regular player, they're certainly welcome to drop in, see if they like the guys that are playing and be involved that way. And for for other stuff outside of league, the goal right now for me is to probably try and run something once a month, outside of league, either intro events, little mini tournaments, that kind of stuff. I've always liked the idea. It's a fairly simple, very easy to play in campaign system that's not designed by Catalyst, but it's one that they do recommend. That's basically a drop-in campaign system. And I've always wanted to run one of those as like kind of a public game. So you're basically a merc unit, and you have I think it's 2.5 million C-bills to start with to buy your mech. You basically choose a faction you're from that gets you the ability to basically purchase a special kind of ability related to that faction. And every scenario, you basically get paid an amount of C-bills based on whether the mission was a success, if you got a special objective achieved, and if you were destroyed, you get less. But if you lose your mech, you're not completely bankrupt, you're not out, you just get paid a little bit less. And then for salvage, basically when you destroy enemy units and don't fully core them, so if you don't, you just knock them out or surrender them, they go into the salvage pool, and then at any point in time, as you build up your personal war chest, you can choose to buy one of the units you've salvaged and move up that way. And there's development for your pilots, like skill points and everything like that. So the more you play, the kind of the better mech you can build up. But if you miss a week or 2 weeks or something like that, or a month, or you get shot and you lose your mech, it's not a big deal. It's not, okay, you're out, you don't get to play anymore, or you're an infantryman until somebody can get you a mech kind of thing. So
okay, yeah. So and what's the name of this campaign that you're talking about? That's not made by Catalyst or
I have.
Do you know?
I'd have to look up the exact name. I've got all the PDFs and everything for it. It's one that they recommend. It's one that, like, as a demo agent, it's on sort of like their stuff, but you can find it outside of that. And I can't think of the name of it for the life of me as I'm sitting here, and I feel bad about it.
No, don't worry. We'll get it later and post it in the.
Yeah. Yeah, as soon as I'm not talking to you, I'll go look it up and send it to you. But
no, it's all good.
It's it's a really neat, really simple system. So
nice. Yeah, it kind of sounds familiar to the one that they have as well. I can't remember the name of the Chaos campaign, I think. It's
not the war chest with the Chaos campaign. Go ahead, sorry.
No, it's all good. Yeah, just from what you're describing there, it kind of sounds similar to it. Then that was the one that I was looking at, just with some of the buddies to maybe put the taste on their taste buds for BattleTech, right, and just show them that other side of it. Unfortunately, never took flight yet, so we'll see how that goes with maybe just a weekend kind of gaming thing, and just run it and see how the boys like it, right? So
yeah, no, I mean that system, the war chest system, it's a little bit more involved. I think this one's actually just called BattleTech Missions, if I'm remembering it correctly. Okay. But the war chest system and that Chaos campaign system, it's a step up in complexity from BattleTech Missions, but for guys who've played, and not necessarily BattleTech, but any type of war game before, the Chaos campaign, the war chest campaign won't be too complex for them at all. It's a nice streamlined system that has some interesting things about it, but overall I think it works pretty well.
Nice.
And they've got a whole bunch of errors for it now, like in different books they've got like those tracks and everything for it. So if you want to play like, oh, this Merc campaign, Chaos campaign, they've got like a little, here's sort of the rough scenario to follow. The actual, what is the name of that book? Um, oh, is it? I'm looking at my bookshelf right now trying to find it. The Total Chaos, which is the one, the sort of one of the debut ones for it. That's in the Jihad.
Yep.
Is a phenomenal book. It's super detailed, and there's like 6 different campaign arcs you can do in it that have story missions intertwined with sort of your filler missions and your unique little missions. And I've always wanted to take a group through that book because I think it would be just a blast to play.
Oh, no doubt. If anybody's interested or loves that kind of stuff, they'll jump right on top of that for sure. Yeah. It's always fun, right? Like having people involved in campaigns and telling the story.
Yeah.
Coming up, of course, with the story. I know yourself, you love doing that kind of stuff too. And it kind of goes across a whole bunch of other gaming systems, like even myself, like I do it for other systems as well. Just kind of
you were running one for Bolt Action recently, right?
Yeah, actually, just we're still going on it. Actually, tonight, I should say, is our another battle. So it's kind of the last battle. Like the one side has to literally hold out. So if they don't, it probably ends. Nice. But yeah, same thing, right? It tells a story. You throw in whatever, you make up your stories, you have different little objectives and events and match players up, and you get to enjoy seeing the players have fun and see how they experience the missions and experience the how they get through to the objectives of the match, right? So it's pretty cool.
And both the creativeness and the poor decision making of players that cannot be anticipated.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's so true.
I know. For the most recent game I started on Thursdays, they're actually doing Allied Mercenary Command in the Chaos March in 3066. And the first mission, they're on Fletcher. They're going to hit the Capellans to grab some information from them. They've got total surprise. They come in, and they were, they got themselves into some trouble because the players weren't super familiar. I was introducing them to infantry and battle armor and vehicles, things they hadn't really run into yet.
Right.
And they were doing all right. And then the Capellan reinforcements rolled in, and they were holding them off while the team basically got the data out of the center. And an archer went running up a hall, basically, I call it a hallway, but a street, blew his piloting roll, went down, and then a mention got on him, and he just couldn't shake this thing. And it ended up ripping his leg off. And, they had a certain amount of C-bills to kind of build their own units that are working together. And they didn't really want to abandon this $13.5 million archer.
No kidding.
But they're in the middle of enemy territory. So they decided to save Private Archer. And if you've ever seen Saving Private Ryan, that's pretty much how it went. They ended up losing, I think, 3 mechs, 2 pilots captured, another 1 or 2 crippled, trying to get this archer out. But the archer got out.
That's crazy.
It's not something I had planned or anticipated them doing.
Oh, you're probably giggling the whole time as it was happening.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. And that's
plus for the introductory, they get to go get their pilots out.
That's awesome. And speaking of I haven't played with vehicles or armor or VTOLs, aerospace fighters, all that stuff yet either. How different is that? Rule set wise, is it very similar to the mechs? I know they have their own sheets. And then, of course, there was a whole bunch of books that they've had, of course, in the past that they've released for like aerospace fighters and that kind of thing. Do you see a lot of them? I guess it's kind of a couple questions here, but do you see a lot of that in game? Just normally, like, do guys bring that kind of stuff out?
I mean, it really depends. They do have fairly different rules. Vehicles are the closest to mechs by far, but they have very unique rules in their own set. Vehicles in BattleTech are very fragile.
Okay.
From a crit perspective, because there's multiple locations. Normally in BattleTech, a 2 and a 12 is a floater, right? Like, 12 hits the head and a 2 is a floater. On a vehicle, a 2 and a 12 are critical chances. An 8 on the side is a critical chance. And there's about 2 or 3 per side that lead to motive rolls that can pillbox a vehicle or slow it down. So vehicles tend to only have, they only have either 4 or 5 hit locations, depending on if they have a turret or not. But they have roughly the same amount of armor as a mech. So they're very difficult to just outright kill through, drilling through a side for the most part. But it's pretty easy to smack their tracks off or damage the hover system, and then they're just left sitting there basically as a turret, right? When you play with vehicles, they're a real unknown even as the GM, because you don't know if the first shot's going to hit the ammo in them or if they're going to take 300 points of armor damage and just be sitting there still firing LRMs, right? Aerospace fighters are glass cannons. They hit really, really hard, but if they take a certain amount of damage in a shot, they have to make a control roll, and they can risk losing altitude or crashing or that kind of stuff. A lot of times if you see I don't know if you've ever seen Ouchie's Bat Reps. Part of the Memphis group, he used to do battle reports for BattleTech like 4 to 7 years ago.
Okay.
They used a lot of aerospace in their games. So if you ever want, you can go look at some of the ones where he's got like all aerospace forces against all mech forces.
Nice.
And that's just nuts to watch. But what I find generally for a campaign is that throwing in vehicles, throwing in infantry, throwing in battle armor or the odd, aerospacer or conventional fighter, they're great curveballs for if players get too focused on just killing mechs.
Okay. Yeah.
Because a lot of those like really nasty mechs that take for example a Warhawk C, we'll say, 2 ERPBCs, 2 large pulse lasers, targeting computer, does have a flamer, but for the most part, it's purely a mech killing machine. Well, you put that up against battle armor, it's really not any good against battle armor. It's struggles against fast vehicles if you can say out of the pulse arcs. You start seeing guys who get, these really high level characters with these really tricked out mechs, and they've got all the Gauss rifles in the world, but then they got to dig, 100 guys out of a building, and it's kind of a comedy of errors, right? They just don't have the technology for it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the common designs make a lot more sense when you consider why are there machine guns on, this catapult variant? Well, because it needs something to defend it against infantry, which is the most common enemy it would run into in real life, right? So I love them. I think they're great change of paces. They can be difficult to balance from a BV or comp perspective, just because, like I mentioned with the vehicles there, that vehicle could take one big shot, get critted and go out even easier than a mech, or it can just get hammered, and vehicles tend to be pretty cheap for their weapons loadouts because of it. I find vehicles and infantry and battle armor tend to be a little under BV'd, but it leads to interesting stuff when you play with them.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. I know one time I came into the store and I seen you were playing, I think, against Jordan, and Jordan Ashworth, he was he was fighting against you, and I think he had a VTOL, so it was kind of interesting to see that kind of move around a little bit and see what they can do. I'm just kind of in my head, I'm thinking like MechWarrior 5, and I remember how much of a pest some vehicles could have been. So as you were talking there, I was just like, that makes total sense. Tunnel vision on the mech, you just want to take it out, and then that SRM carrier is just peppering you from the side or something, right? So
Yeah, as I recall, in that scenario, Jordan, it got interesting because I think he was running a rifleman that had 242 for back armor, and the VTOL that was being run as part of that scenario against him was a warrior with an AC2.
uh-huh.
So
Poo poo.
every time I plinked him in the back, there went, yeah, all the back armor in a location. So, but the rifleman lived.
Just puts a little bit more of a threat and thought process of, ooh, okay, what do I do now? Right, when you're in that sticky situation like that. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's
they can be a. Sorry, go ahead.
no. Keep going.
I was gonna say, and they can be a really good way of making the opponent, like making it a little more epic for your players. So, a couple units of battle armor, a couple cheap vehicles, and then some light, like lighter medium mechs. Well, then they can go into a fight, be outnumbered 2-1, but still have a pretty significant BV advantage that you're kind of hiding with the numbers of the opponent. So they can still kind of feel like, oh yeah, we're larger than life. We're wading through these guys. Whereas, a lot of times with mechs, it can be a little harder to do that without getting them in some serious trouble.
Yeah. I noticed every time I've kind of built a force, I've always tried to kind of balance the mech choices throughout my, within the point limit that I have, the BV values. So like I won't go and dump it into, a big assault mech, right? Because I know for the fact, like, okay, the assault mechs are probably going to be really slow, so I'm not going to be that maneuverable. Sure, I'll have the firepower, but you know what? If I want to take an assault mech, maybe like the one force I made, I was going against Bill's Falcons, and of course I was playing my Wolves, and I ended up taking the the gargoyle, right? Pretty solid.
Yeah.
Had some decent weaponry on it. It was fast enough to move around, and then supported it with some other mechs. There was a Mad Cat and some other ones that had I think I had a Fenris in there too. So I just try to split it up to make sure that, like, okay, you know what, I'm comfortable with my mechs. I like their loadouts. I like how they can maneuver. I always try to like have at least one of my mechs that maybe has jump jets, just for triggering that maneuverability of, okay, I got him surrounded, let me start getting behind him now, making him make that harsh choice of who do you want to take hits from the back, or whatever the case may be, right?
And Lance and star building in general is so fascinating because there's so many ways to solve the same problem. And you see so many different things, and some players can make something work, others can't. Some guys can play anything. And some techs, like you can see players debate certain techs like jump jets. Like there's a few guys that I've known, oh, those are wasted tonnage, right? It was an infamous quote from a guy.
Yeah.
But then other players, like I love jump jets. I think they're really, really good. And I think they give you so much flexibility defensively and so much bigger of a threat radius, right?
Yeah.
Like when you can only run or walk a mech, it kind of almost moves like a rook in chess. Like you've got almost like it's almost like a combination of a rook and a knight. Like you've got that forward and back threats, and then kind of that right angles from your turns threats. But with a jump jet, you get that queen effect where your threat is just everywhere, right?
Oh, 100%. 100%, especially when you got a high number for a jump, right? Yeah, I've seen some interesting, forces. Like I've seen guys who have busted out. I played it against. It was one of my first matches since coming back, and it was like, person took a Dashie, and I think it was 2 Koshis and what was the other one? I think it was maybe a Viper and a Nova, I think it was. But like definitely sunk most of their points into the big Dashie. And it was like, okay, this is going to be tough. I outnumber you because I was playing Sphere, but there is no way that I was like going to be outmaneuvering and whatnot. So, and of course, we tried playing with the 3D terrain that I had printed. So that was a completely new experience for me, which was cool, but definitely learned a lot of thing about the blocking the shots just on the angles, right? But like definitely got tunnel vision on trying to take out his assault mech. Just kind of forced all my heavies to one section, try to support. He definitely outplayed me and used, like I said, the when the hex is blocked, the opponent gets to choose what if the hex is being blocked or not, if terrain was kind of like partially in it kind of thing. And
if you're right on the hex line there, you can pick.
Exactly. So then blocked my shot, so I got no shots, and then on his activation he like moved out into the open, and then when it came to shooting, like literally destroyed my catapult in one volley with this Dashie, which would be expected, but it was just like, oh man, like that hurt. And then all of a sudden the lights came from the other side and just started stripping armor and stripping internals from the back, right, as I'm trying to like slowly turn to face them, so it's interesting the tactics and stuff like that happens within games, and then you start to kind of learn, and you start to think about the angles, and you start thinking about like, okay, where is he taking the most damage, right? Where's the mech been hurt, and then you try to angle, and then to hit those sides, which is cool. It's a nice aspect of the game, right? You start thinking about that a little bit more in depth. So
and I think one of the things you actually don't see enough players without a lot of experience do, and it's such a key thing in BattleTech, if you're playing in a comp setting, is just kind of mentally tracking where they've hit people and using that to go for where they're going for attacks on people. For example, if you're firing at a medium mech and you hit a Gauss into the right leg, you're not going to go in on most mediums, but at that point it's got 10 points or less of armor. So if at a later move you've got a heavy or an assault and you can get to right in front of it, either side or behind it, you might actually be better off to take that side, because if you end up in that side arc, if you kick it, you're guaranteed to kick the leg you want. So you start to see that inform some people's tactics, where I know for a lot of new players, they just equate back armor with winning, right? Like, if I'm getting behind you, that's good because you got less armor. And I've seen situations where a player will have completely stripped the front of a mech, and then they'll jump behind some guy to shoot him in 10 points at rear armor because, I'm behind you now, I'm winning, right? And it's like, well, not normally yes, but in this case, it's harder to get through now, right? Like, and those are sort of the things you'll see with guys as they get experience that separate guys who get tactics and guys who get tactics and have experience, right?
No, for sure. So. I know Bill did that, tried to do that to me as well in some games. He was, like I said, he was trying to angle to hit that one side that I was hurt on, right? But no, that's good. That's good info for any players too that are, listening and want a little bit more out of the game and a little bit more knowledge, which is cool, because it's always good to hear from experienced players of how I guess the mentality of sometimes of a game can go, right, and it's not losing focus on the whole kit and caboodle of, okay, well, you are definitely hurt in the front, and you know what, I know for a fact you have 2 slots of ammo on that side. Let's risk getting that ammo, right? So
exactly. And you see that pay off with when you start to really, if you play a lot, you'll start to learn certain variants. So you'll start to learn things like, the stock Hunchback, the 4G. It's terrifying for what it is, for its BV, its armor, its weapon loadout. Like, Hunchbacks are scary creatures. And then you realize they're 4.54 armor across the back, and their ammo's in the left torso with nothing else. And then even though it's a scary mech and a difficult mech to deal with, you've now got hey, if I get one medium in there, now I've got a 44% chance to make it go boom, right?
Yeah.
And you start to learn each of those mech's little weaknesses. You start to learn, okay, where is the big gun on, say, a Victor? Which arm is it in? Because once you know that, then you know where's my safe area, right? Or what do I want to prioritize shooting? And that's sort of where that next level of tactics comes in. The first level is I've got to learn the basics of this game, how it plays, what I like. The second level is, okay, how do mechs synergize? How do their mechs synergize? Like, what are my ranges? And then when you got to get into the third level, it's targeting locations, targeting the weaknesses of mechs, knowing what has a lot of ammo and what's like, if I ignore that, it'll be out in 6 shots, right? Like,
yeah.
And that's where you start to get that next level of building up your tactics and building up your lists and building up your synergies. And sometimes it's the most innocuous looking things that synergize ridiculously well.
That's awesome. I know when it's funny because when I was like painting up my mechs, I tend to grab a whole bunch of mechs that I think or I've seen or did some research on for like the certain houses, that they've used. Considering we got all these books with all this info and fluff and everything, but I've always kind of done it where it was like, okay, you know what, this force I want it to try and like utilize missiles and narcs and that kind of thing, right? And see how it plays out, right? And then you got the other one that's kind of more of I want this to be a fast moving kind of maybe a scout lance or something like that, right? And try to work on having mechs that have an okay amount of firepower, but they're fast, that kind of thing. And I don't know how effective that tends to be, with like synergy and stuff like that within the game. But it's interesting to see the effects of it. What pulses are like, what PPCs are, Gauss rifles. But you know what? Maybe missiles you haven't really used too often, right? Because you don't like them, or maybe you haven't checked out streaks. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff I like to definitely hear about and like see in game, like the actual mechanics of it in game, right?
Yeah, and that's it. As good or bad as a tech is on paper, there's always going to be players that can make it work and make it work for them, or absolutely cannot make it work. And there's little things too that you don't notice unless you either play the game a lot or you are around guys who play the game a lot. For example, I like multiple missile launchers, the MMLs, which are mid 3060s tech that can fire either SRMs or LRMs. From a one size launcher. They got both ammo types. They get access to both specialty munitions. Super versatile. Just
Sounds
small
like
launchers for an LRM, big launcher for an SRM, right? But, I hadn't really looked them in depth when I first started using them. I just figured, the MML9 will be the best one. It's the biggest one, right? And one of my buddies was talking to me and he goes, what's the best MML? And I'm like, no, what's the best MML? He's like, an MML7 with Artemis. And we pop out the chart, and I'm looking, and you realize, holy crow, an MML7 with Artemis, like, I think on a 6+, you're hitting with 6 missiles at the 7. It's just so efficient the way it ends up working. Whereas the 9 is actually a fairly inefficient weapon for the way the cluster chart works. So little things like that you might have had to play 10 games to pick that up, and then the guy just points it out, and you're like, holy crow. That's a great tip,
Yeah, it is definitely stuff like that, because you would think, like, even just if you go with like LRMs as an example, you're thinking, you know what, I want to try to get the most hits with the LRM, so I'm going to try to get a 20 somewhere, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the most efficient. I've never really looked at the weapons like that. I never really looked at the cluster charts like that, right? And then I know And then I know the one match I had, I tried MRMs, and they're like, oh, these are interesting. I like these,
Yeah, MRMs are if you're playing good enough gunner, they're really good. They kind of struggle a bit with that +1 to hit.
Yeah.
Just because that's Battletech in many ways comes down to a lot of times it doesn't matter how big your gun is if you don't hit, right? And with MRMs, as long as you can find ways either through C3I or really good gunners or careful movement to get them into that range and get them into action, they're phenomenal. But I've also seen people get so frustrated because they're running to get into the optimal range, then the +1 comes in and they're a 4-gunner to start with, and they're looking at like 10s, 11s, and they're just like, I can't hit with this darn thing,
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's true. It's true. And then on the other hand, you get yourself a mech that has like multiple SRMs, and you've already punched through the armor. It's really nice when those effects happen. Fishing for those crits.
Oh yeah.
Right?
There's some things like I think a crossbow B, for example, is 4 straight 6 on a 65-ton Omni that goes 5.8 with good armor, and that thing just runs in and just barfs on people.
That's funny. Just barfs.
Yeah.
I can picture just a whole bunch of missiles hitting.
And I mean, if you're looking at damage per ton, damage per crit slot, and that generally technically an LRM-20 with Artemis is the most efficient, but it's I've got the graph if you want it.
That's awesome.
I just had to open it up in the background. I'm like, yeah, here we go. So
that's awesome. Yeah, no, you can probably send me a pic or a link or something like that. I can post it in the vid for players if they want to look at it and stuff. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I'll send you some. I'll send you some stuff I had once upon a time for this kind of stuff. You can get a kick out of it.
Yeah, so
back when I was young and
back when you were young and what and
back when I was young and had time.
Yeah, that is so true, right? Like it's so true right now. Yeah, I know. I'm going back to work. Actually, I just coming back to work since when this drops. So be interesting. It's a nice short week, but yeah, it'll be interesting to get games in again. I know I got to bust out some mechs and get the painting mojo going again as well. But I think that's going to be pretty good for this episode. So a lot of good info. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll hopefully be doing a lot more Battletech, in weeks to come and whatnot as well. After I finally get my foot in the door again and start rolling some dice and learning some tactics and get my, mechs slammed across the board. But it'll be a lot of fun. I know there's a lot of guys playing at the shop, and also close friends with Jason there too. I know he's always down for playing. Probably give as much as I love classic Battletech and whatnot, right? I'll probably give Alpha Strike a try just to see what it's like. But it's I know it's different, so we'll see how it is.
Yeah, I mean the Alpha Strike it's a game that was designed in a different era. So, they only came up with Alpha Strike, what was it? 12 years ago, maybe 10 years ago?
Probably. Yeah.
If that. Yeah, if that. So it plays a little differently. It's if you like a very stripped down version of Battletech that plays a little bit faster and is built better to accommodate 3D terrain, you'll like Alpha Strike. Not my cup of tea personally, but there's no wrong way to play the game. So
definitely some good words from Stephen here. So but again, thanks for coming on to the show again. It's always a pleasure having you here. Me. It's always some good chat, especially with Battletech. The Battletech Lord, of the area here. So He's got the knowledge.
No,
He's been
there's
playing
that.
for a while. He knows his stuff.
I
so.
just I just took what I learned in school and applied it to here, which is if you steal from one guy, it's plagiarism. If you steal from a lot of people, it's research. And I know all the old players who know everything, so I just talked to all of them.
There you go. There you go. That's awesome. Again, thanks for joining in. Hope you enjoyed it. You check out our YouTube, Instagram, Facebook pages. I'll be posting pretty much stuff that I'm working on and whatnot, and I'll be putting links and whatnot in the comment section for the episodes. So if you want to check out any of the pages, what's going on with the Edmonton Battletech League as well, that kind of stuff. So it'll all be there. And we'll have some more of these kind of episodes, tactics, possibly weaponry, all that kind of stuff. What's new, what's hot, what's coming out. Just kind of like that Hammerhead. Apparently that's sold out that I totally missed. New miniature that came out. So
yeah, it was.
Probably.
Yeah, I had pulled it up because I was going to mention it, and then I was like, oh, it's already gone. Okay.
Yeah, no, I actually just seen it yesterday, and I was like,
okay,
totally missed that one. But I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
I'll find it somewhere. But yeah, again, thanks for joining in. Thanks for being here, and we will catch you guys next time. Trident Wargaming. Build it, paint it, play it.